Call tonight's meeting of County Council to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilwoman Law, the optional prayer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us pray. Dearest Jesus, we have come again to let our thoughts and hearts bring us to remember the times when we recall with pain the dark times in our lives and could not see the light. We remember the occasions we did not recognize the small pleasures, and we were quick and hasty to criticize. It is the beginning of a season of renew. We are asking guidance to ease each other's burdens with equal justice. We want to live each day to use the talents given to us to heed the call to serve and safeguard. We have been given the right to demonstrate the equality in our lives and show others that it is better to understand the ideas of others than to fight at any cost. Let us set the example. We give thanks in this season of renew and bless all. Amen.
Amen.
Roll call, Mr. Smith.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Here.
Mrs. Fatica,
Here.
Dr. Faust,
Here.
Mr. Leone,
Here.
Mrs. Law,
Here.
Mr. Horton,
Here.
Chairman Brenneman.
Here. Next, we have a special guest, Councilman Mel Witherspoon, City Councilman, and he's going to be giving a presentation to Detective Mark Rosenthal. And so, if Mark, if you can come forward as well. I believe I saw you. Okay. And the floor is yours. The mic's on. And before you begin, I just do want to think that I think it's we're all appreciative that you came and did this and for this recognition. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. President, members of council, those of you who are present. I'm not sure if I should give my name and address. I'm accustomed to hearing that. So I'll do it just for the records. Melvin Witherspoon, 832 East 36th Street, Erie, Pennsylvania. Members of council, for 27 years, I've been fortunate enough to operate a basketball league during the summer called Spoons League. And it doesn't cost anyone, any of the kids, anything to play. It's not contained in the city. We have young men from Harbor Creek, Mill Creek. We even had some last year who came from Corey just to play, and they showed up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But I'm here tonight to say thank you to Detective Mark Rosenthal. His presence brings about the aspect of police-community relationship. When he's there, my job is just to run the league. And if he's not there, I become the police, and they don't listen to me as well as they do to him. But I watch him how he operates. He moves around, he watches people, he talks to the kids, and little kids come up to him. That's police-community relationship. And when he's present, we have very little or no problems. However, we had 316 participants in 2017. No problems with the ball players. The girls and social media, that's where my problem starts. And the city police, they monitor social media. And they'll tell me, Mel, we're gonna have a little scuffle. The girls coming down, and 10, 20 minutes later, here they come. But I look at the city police, then I look for Mr. Rosenthal. He's quiet when he does his job. And I want to thank him, and I'll thank him every year, and I would thank the county every year for their participation in police-community relationship. Without his presence, without your support, without the DA's office, my job will be a little harder. Now, he don't have to watch the 316 participants. We have them under control. It's the 215 spectators that he has to deal with. I want to thank him. I want to present him with a plaque that says everything I just told you. So I'm not going to read it again, but I want to thank him year after year. If I have to give him plaques for the next 20 years, his den, his wall, his man cave will have a wall full of plaques. I want to thank council. I want to thank you, sir, for a job well done, and I appreciate it. The kids appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Mark, did you have any words you'd like to say, or?
I'd just like to say, the program that Mel runs, it's a great program for the youth. He and his staff, they run a very well-organized program. Occasionally, you have a few problems, but like he said, you know, I mean, it's not too bad, but it's a great program for the youth in the summertime to give them something to do, especially during the late afternoon and early evenings, instead of being out there running the streets and possibly getting into, you know, trouble. But again, thank you, Mel. I appreciate it.
Sir.
I enjoy helping you out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to hearing of the public. Those who called ahead will have 5 minutes. Those who did not will have 3. We only have one individual that called ahead. That's Chris Shepner. Mr. Shepner, you'll have 5 minutes. Just state your name and municipality.
Okay. My name's Chris Shepner. I live at 1556 East Grandview Boulevard on the city side. So not the Mill Creek side, it's on the city. I have I run a truck stop out in Harbor Creek, the TA Travel Centers of America. I've been there 21 years, and for 21 years I've had to deal with truck drivers and forward traffic every single day. The reason I'm here is to talk about the truck stop VGT, the video gaming terminals that are slated to go into truck stops if Erie County allows it. And I know the casino does not want that to happen. The reason I'm up here is to fight for the truck drivers. Truck drivers, they only have so many hours they're allowed to be on the road, and they get stuck at these truck stops throughout Erie County, other states, and all that stuff, and they're stuck for the weekend. Yes, we have a casino. If you go with the Harbor Creek location, we have a casino 8 miles away. There is no shuttle to get to the casino for them. They are not allowed to drive their trucks because once they're on downtime, that truck is not allowed to be started unless it's for heat only in the wintertime, and it's not allowed to be moved off of the truck stop. So they are stuck there. So with the video gaming terminals, it gives them another option to do something than sit for 24 hours and watch movies in our TV lounges and all that stuff. The truck stop companies are a long-term company of this community, of Erie County. Law allocates 10% of the video gaming terminals to go to the local jurisdiction. Based on the Illinois truck stop market, that's approximately $115,000 to $150,000 a year going to the local jurisdictions, based on the Illinois market. Casino patrons and truck stop patrons are totally different. So the guys that come in the truck stops are not headed to a casino. So we're looking for something for them to do. We'll make a little more money for the county. I mean, if Erie County opts out on this, these drivers might just keep driving by to a different state that allows it, and they can spend their money there instead of spending their money in Erie County. I think we should vote yes on it and allow it in truck stops. It's a lot of revenue for the truck stops and for Erie County. So just want to give my advice on it and say a few words on it. Like I said, I've dealt with truck drivers for 21 years, and I mean, this is what I do for a living, is I talk to them every single day. And when this came up, I talk to all my local drivers that come in all the time, that stop for the weekend, get stuck for the weekend. And like I said, instead of them sitting for 12 hours watching a movie, because we put movies on TV for them, this gives them something different to do. So, that's it.
Okay, thank you. And just so you know, it's going to be item double G, GG,
Okay, yep.
on the agenda. If you want to stick around, you'll
yeah.
probably hear some comments and before we make
Oh,
a
yeah,
vote
okay.
on it. So,
Okay.
thanks again for coming down.
Hey, no problem.
Okay, those next, just come, give your name and your municipality, and then you'll have 3 minutes to talk.
Art Leopold, live in Mill Creek, Erie County. Honorable Councilman, I speak very briefly to you today about community benefit agreements. I'm sure you've heard a lot about this. Councilman Horton has been an advocate. There's a growing movement in Erie County to initiate these agreements wherever there's development being done. I was recently at the Erie County Community Services Financing Authority public hearing about the organization Greater Regional Erie Athletic Team Training Project. And I was very favorably surprised to talk with the individuals from that organization, and they're looking forward to talking with Erie County United, which represents the Community Benefits Agreement, in order to initiate a process where the community wins and that business and that organization wins because of a joint agreement for the benefit of the community. This is a tool that can be used to raise all boats in our community. I don't have to tell you the recent news that we've seen regarding the plight of Black Americans in our community. And I wanted to impress upon you, in your thoughts and what you do, to please advocate for community benefit agreements. Thank you.
Thank you. And name and municipality, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Absolutely. Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Ted Hoffman. I'm a regional manager with Pilot Flying J Travel Centers, representing the Pilot Flying J here in Erie, PA at 8035 Perry Highway. Similar to the gentleman that spoke before, on behalf of the 15,000 folks that visit our travel center every single week, we'd ask you to opt in on the VGT and not opt out. We spent about $1.5 million in that facility over the last year, really trying to improve our parking lots, our fueling, our restrooms, our showers, and really offer a lot for our professional drivers that are spending many hours on the road, many of them coming through Illinois and had the opportunity to take advantage of the VGT in Illinois, and are asking for this also here in Erie, PA. So obviously it's a stop that they're stopping today, spending a little bit more extra money with the taxes on fuel, and asking, at the same time, we're continuing to improve our facility, but definitely these folks are asking for VGT as well, and we're asking you not to opt out as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Yes, sir, name and municipality, and you have 3 minutes.
Jerry Smidio, Mill Creek Township. Hey, I'm really speaking on Article N in your agenda coming up, the implementation of a $5 fee for registration on cars for a local use fund. I'm totally opposed to it. I believe you should all vote no against it. And some of the reasons I have, Mill Creek already receives this year $1,650,000. Next year, they'll receive $1,720,000. The city, I believe, gets $2,760,000. Harbor Creek, when I look at their budget, I see I'm not sure if this number is correct, if this is all they have, is $665,339. Northeast gets $331,917. We've already went through the highest gas tax. We're the highest gas tax in the nation, 28 cents. 28 cents a gallon. Since 2009, 4,500 people have lost their jobs at GE, union people alone, doesn't count management. This year, due to Obamacare, not due to Obamacare, due to many factors affecting Obamacare. The rates are going to go up 31%. If you read the paper, and I know you have a set ceiling on the amount of money that people would have to pay in seniors, but I think this is a backdoor tax. I think it hasn't been publicized, and it hasn't. It only came up when Harbor Creek came up on the meeting, and the only reason I learned of it was due to Channel 24. I think it's something you really got to look hard at. I looked at some other counties that had it, Center County, they ended it after, I believe, 4 or 5 years. Once again, I just ask you, I think this is a backdoor tax. I don't think people can afford it. I know $5 a year isn't a lot of money to a lot of people, but $5 a year is a lot of money to some people. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And consideration.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Name and municipality, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Danny Phoenix. I live in the city of Erie. I come to speak concerning the county-run land bank proposals that are before us. What Erie city and counties needs is neighborhood sustainability. So it's something I've been talking about for a while, and no one seems to have really any good answers other than the same jobs drum that we like to bang around here that doesn't really carry. So I understand there's a couple of proposals facing the county right now. The executive office, from what I understand, wants to create more bureaucracy, another office, another position, support staff, all of which is going to take away from this $1 million that the county is getting yearly, none of which is going to go directly towards these neighborhoods. We don't need more of the same. Mr. Faust, while I don't know too much about his proposal, I'm encouraged that it's more of a revitalization fund that would be open to various projects and organizations and neighborhoods, because it's the neighborhoods that need the money. We don't need the money here in this courthouse. We don't need more offices. We don't need more people on payroll, getting good benefits when the people in our community it's all the resources have left. I look around the city of Erie, and all the resources have left these neighborhoods, and we need to do something to bring it back home. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Name and municipality, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Jim McGoey, City of Erie. I'd like to address council on their agenda tonight. They're going to vote on the land bank. There's a couple items in place that you may be aware of and may not be aware of. The fact that the city already has a committee working on this. It's been in place for over a year. They lack the funding. You folks are voting on a project tonight where you have the funding. I would hope that in your judgment and that you would do a collaborative effort regardless of what you do. Land banks are not the only answer. Flint, Michigan did a standout job with theirs. Baltimore did a project, it was called CORE. The acronym was CORE. It worked well. Pennsylvania took that same project, changed it to SCORE, and tried to implement it in Philadelphia. Guess what happened? The politicians got in the way. Nothing against you folks. It just didn't work in Philadelphia. But if you bring it up on the internet and you look, you'll find these cities that have implemented these programs, and they work. The thing is, you've already got one effort out there with no money. You folks have the money. I would hope if you pass this tonight that you could put something together and do a collaborative effort, and don't miss the opportunity that we've been given. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McGoey. And also just for your awareness, now there's normally, since this would have been the last council meeting Under some items, we probably would have considered them for a second reading or a vote, but instead, what we're going to do for that item, in particular, the land bank options, is that we're going to hold a special meeting at 5 PM next Tuesday, and that's when we will be voting on the land bank resolution, just for your ordinances, just for your awareness. So thanks again. Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
I have a question. This is my first time here.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Did you have a question or did you have a
Well,
statement?
it's something about the landlord tenant, and I don't know if it's my time that I'm supposed to. present.
You can speak, but it's not a question and answer format. If you do have questions, you can stay behind after the meeting. And I believe I saw Joe Agulia.
I
Joe-
prepared something to.
If you want to speak, yeah, that's fine. Again, just your name and municipality, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. But again, just the format, it's not a question or answer type format.
Thank you. My name is Amy Reynolds, and I live in McCain Township. I'm here to speak about the landlord tenant proposal that you guys are going to be voting on soon. And I prepared something to read to you. Institutionalized discrimination occurs when any targeted group or person is systematically denied access to vital resources. Denying convicted felons fair housing opportunities in an oppressive form of institutionalized discrimination which has detrimental effects on not only the individual but the community and society as well. When a felon has paid their debt for the criminal conviction and proven to be a rehabilitated member of society, it is both crucial and unusual punishment to label them for life and refuse them the restoration of their rights and liberties as a citizen. For the past 15 years, my fiancé has been living with a felony conviction on his record. He has served his sentence and paid his fines. He works and contributes to society, yet he has never been given back the opportunities or access to social resources that other citizens are provided. He is a kind man and a loving father, but his felony label has demoted him to a second-class status and has made it impossible for him to effectively meet one of the most basic human needs, which is a safe shelter and home. We have 4 children together, and every day is filled with a looming feeling of anxiety about our living situation. Without the economic capital needed to purchase a home, we are left with no other option but to rent. Nearly every rental property has a strict policy of not renting to convicted felons and engage in discriminatory practices based on this policy. My fiance's felony conviction is a stigma that he is unable to escape, and it is a label that has had devastating impact on the lives of myself and my 4 children. Everyday homelessness is a reality we may wake up to face. Due to strict felony policies, my fiancé is not permitted to live in the same home as myself and his children, forcing us to live in separate homes. The perpetuation of the negative felon stereotype has created a hysterical view of convicted felons and fostered a deep-seated fear of people with felony convictions on their criminal record. But the reality is, convicted felons are a part of our community, just like everyone else. And they have the same basic needs as all people do, which is the need for food, shelter, water, and a need for stability. Convicted felons are more than just the crime they committed and were convicted of. Not all are considered, or some are considered monsters to be feared and loathed. Convicted felons are fathers, brothers, sisters, mothers, neighbors, co-workers, and friends. They are people just like you and I and are deserving of equal opportunities in the pursuit of happiness, but at the very least, they are deserving of a place that is called home and that is safe. And everybody makes mistakes, and everybody deserves to be able to prove that they've made a change. And I thank you for allowing me to speak. Sorry I didn't know what I was doing, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for your awareness and for those in the audience as well, council will likely table the HRC ordinance tonight and take it up for a vote at our next special meeting on Tuesday at 5 PM. Our solicitor is going to review that, and we're also going to discuss it at this Thursday special Finance Committee meeting as well. So thanks for speaking and sharing your thoughts. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Was that a yes, no, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Okay, go ahead, Joe. You have 3 minutes.
justice.
And thank you for coming tonight, by the way.
Thank you. Joe Golia, Mill Creek Township, and also Erie County Human Relations Commission. Council, I wanted to thank you, first of all. You've done a yeoman's job in dealing with all the issues involving this ordinance. The commission ordinance, as you can tell, people like Amy have called me. I can't do anything to help them. Why? Because the law doesn't say that I can. There is no ordinance as we sit here right now that can help her. And I'd just like you to take that into consideration. It's not just Amy, there's others that have called me over the last few months about this issue. I can't do anything to help them. What I can do is ask you folks to continue to do what you're doing, and that through the meshing of all these ideas, I think we're going to come to a really good ordinance. And I really appreciate everything you've done. And I thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Seeing none, we're going to move on. Reports of county officials, Finance Committee, Councilman Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met last Thursday, December 7th, 2017, and we agreed to add items under new business to the agenda, items A through N and Y through double Z. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilman. Personnel Committee, Councilman Leon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Personnel Committee met this past Thursday and put on the agenda items O through X. This will include the pay increases for all appointed officials and includes one position for the district judge, Bizarro's office. These are also proposals for second readings. End of report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Reports of other members of council, Dr. Faust.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak briefly for a few minutes. I know we won't vote tonight, but I just want to continue to expand on some of the thoughts that I talked about at Finance last week and to amplify some of the remarks that Mr. Phoenix had made tonight, which I do not know the gentleman. I'm glad he showed up, as you might imagine. We have some very big decisions to make here in Erie County, very important decisions that will have lasting effect on this community. There are two particular proposals on the table right now to try to address those. And if you looked at Sunday's paper this last weekend, they talked about a lot of different initiatives that have taken place across the country. None of those particular initiatives were a description of what you would consider a traditional land bank. A traditional land bank, how it serves the public, will have to be part of the proposal, and it is part of my proposal. I don't pretend to not have that be part of the final solution. But there has to be more than that. And to me, what in the end we are doing is choosing someone to administer these particular funds. And to my members, my colleagues on council anyway, particularly those who have any inkling of uncertainty as to where these funds should ultimately end up, I would ask, is the most creative thing we can do for our future to embrace the change that we know is coming in this community, to turn away from the practices that we have had in this community for far too long, is the most creative thing we can do. And I don't say this with an ounce of malice toward the proposal that's been put out, but is the most creative thing we can do is to make this program part of county government, which will have to be to some degree funded on the backs of the taxpayers through the general fund, because I would disagree with Mr. Phoenix in one regard. We're going to have to, somebody's going to have to help run this, and that may require additional staff in the future. But if it's not part of county government, then those funds don't have to be absorbed through the general fund. There has to be some other way that we can achieve these objectives rather than just having to be part of county government. And what I fear, and I've said this in the past, is that if we only think in terms of a traditional land bank, all this community will do is create a bank that has land in it. It won't be turned over to the degree that the proponents of a traditional land bank would say otherwise. Because I think as you look at blight within the city, and if you look at blight in other communities where maybe it's not quite as prevalent, but it's still something that needs to be addressed, if you tear down that structure, you have taken care of the problem that the neighbors are going to worry about. And that property quite likely will lie fallow, and it has in many instances in the past. And so I want to be able to take care of the blight where it exists, but I want to create a structure where we have a board and representatives of this community that are thinking in terms of trying to address the issues that create the blight to begin with, that we can prevent it. And I have a lot of faith, maybe some of my colleagues do not, that ECRA can do that. Not only need executive director, who receives far too much criticism in my opinion, but the board itself. My appointee, Mr. Peters, I have a lot of faith in, but Mr. Yaples is one whose appointment is up tonight, is another one. Mr. Sample from the Corey area, I think does a good job. Mr. Paris from the Mill Creek area, and on and on. I think it's a very reputable board. And now, one of the reasons why, in my opinion, they have come under such heavy criticism at times is because they do not act they just don't roll over, be buffaloed and say, well, there's political pressure on us to fund this particular initiative, so we're going to. They were charged by the courts and really county government to some degree when they were first started to create a process that was open and transparent. They have done that. It's been lauded by national organizations, national publications like the Atlantic Monthly. And I think we ought to continue to try to expand on that instead of curtail it. And as we go forward, I just want to think in those particular terms. There has to be some approach that we can take that is not the traditional approach of what a traditional land bank is. That can't be the most creative and the most flexible of responses that this county council can take. And I just ask you to continue to think about that as we go forward on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Moving on to old business. Do I have a motion to, yes, Mr. Leon.
Second.
Would the councilman be willing to amend that to also include item FF, Resolution 64?
I was going to make those two separate.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Carol, so moved by Councilman Leon and seconded by Councilwoman Law. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, could I just?
Dr. Faust.
The ordinance number, you said add 140, or did you? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I knew where we were at. Thank you.
Roll call on the motion to table ordinance number 87 and resolution 64.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Faust.
Move to amend tonight's agenda to add the following items. Ordinances number 139, which essentially replaces resolution number 62, which the action that we want to take has to be done by county ordinance. So that's ordinance number 139, which achieves the same effect regarding the recorder fees for express purpose of demolition of blighted properties, as well as ordinance number 140, which is an amendment to the Administrative Code, Article 4, Section 12D, regarding financial procedures.
Second motion.
Moved by Dr. Faust and seconded by Councilman Leon. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
I'm sorry, did you call me?
That was mine.
yes, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Now, we were moving a little fast and quick, just for everybody's awareness. We had tabled, we had three items that we discussed tabling, and unfortunately, when I asked Mr. Leon to amend his, I left out item DD, which is Resolution 62.
Move the table resolution number 62, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Dr. Faust,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Horton. Any discussion? Roll call?
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Right now, I'll entertain a motion to move items A through I and O through X to second readings.
Also move.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Leon, seconded by Councilman Horton. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes, just for those here in the audience and those watching at home, that council only votes on items, on ordinances that have second readings. Sometimes what we'll do, particularly if it's a pass-through grant, things like that, we'll move it to a second so that we can vote on it immediately, and that's what we've done with those items. So moving on, we're going to have a second reading of ordinance number 115 in title only, Mr. Smith.
A second reading of ordinance number 115, 2017, 11th, 2017 Public Health Fund Budget, supplemental appropriation of $105,295 for tobacco grant.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Horton and seconded by Councilwoman Law. Any discussion? Roll call.
On ordinance 115, Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Second reading of ordinance 116 in title only.
A second reading of ordinance number 116, 2017, 12th, 2017 Public Health Fund Budget, supplemental appropriation of $1,478 for Highway Safety Grant.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Horton, seconded by Councilwoman Fatika. Any discussion? Roll call.
On ordinance 116, Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 117 in title only.
A second reading of ordinance number 117, 2017, 9th, 2017 Library Fund Budget, supplemental appropriation of a $2,000 grant from the Erie Regional Library Foundation.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Horton and seconded by Councilman Leone. Any discussion? Roll call.
On ordinance 117, Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 118 in title only, Mr. Smith.
A second reading of ordinance number 118, 2017, 10th, 2017 Library Fund Budget, supplemental appropriation and approval of a fees for Blasco room rental and Idea Lab.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Leone, seconded by Councilman Horton. Any discussion? Roll call.
On ordinance number 118, Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 119 in title only.
A second reading of ordinance number 119, 2017, first 2018 Library Fund Budget, supplemental appropriation and approval of fees for Blasco room rental and Idea Lab.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Horton and seconded by Councilman Leone. Any discussion? Roll call, Mr. Smith.
On ordinance 119, Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 120 in title only.
A second reading of ordinance number 120, 2017, 2017 Public Safety Fund Budget revised expenditures of $14,371 for purchase of leased vehicle.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Fatika and seconded by Councilman Horton. Any discussion? Roll call.
On ordinance 120, Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 121 in title only.
A second reading of ordinance number 121, 2017, seventh 2017 Capital Projects Fund Budget, supplemental appropriation of $241,449 in grant funds to reduce cost of next generation radio project.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Fatika and seconded by Councilman Leon. Any discussion? Roll call?
On ordinance 121, Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 122 in title only.
Second reading of ordinance number 122, 2017, 2017 Liquid Fuels Fund Budget revised expenditures of $18,156 from emergency funding for Girard Township project.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Law and seconded by Councilman Leon. Any discussion? Roll call?
On ordinance 122, Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. And second reading of ordinance number 123 in title only.
A second reading of ordinance number 123, 2017, 2017 Drug and Alcohol Services Fund Budget, revised revenue and expenditures from additional base fund allocation for fiscal year 2017 through 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Fatika and seconded by Councilman Leon. Any discussion? Roll call?
On ordinance 123, Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 124 in title only.
A first reading of ordinance number 124, 2017, amending Erie County Gaming Revenue Authority, Article 2, Section 5D1F of the Administrative Code of Erie County, previously amended by ordinance number 145, 2016.
First reading of ordinance number 125 in title only.
A first reading of ordinance number 125, 2017, amending the Erie County Affordable Housing Fund Ordinance.
First reading of ordinance number 126 in title only.
A first reading of ordinance number 126, 2017, authorizing the organization of the Neighborhood and Infrastructure Revitalization Fund, NERF, and governing board.
First reading of ordinance number 127 in title only.
A first reading of ordinance number 127, 2017, an ordinance to create the Erie County Land Bank, providing for a board of directors, powers, and funding.
First reading of ordinance number 128 in title only.
A first reading of ordinance number 128, 2017, an ordinance for the implementation of a fee for local use as provided by 75 PA CSA subsection 1935 for each non-exempt vehicle registered to an address in Erie County.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Faust.
I believe we have consensus on items O through X. So without objection, move to approve all those annual salary increases with one motion and one vote tonight.
Second the motion.
Moved by Dr. Faust and seconded by Councilman Leon. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Just to be clear, and for Mrs. Pasquale or for Mr. Sparber, these salaries, do they include the adjustment from the new pay plan that was voted on in July?
They are in alliance with the budget that you passed for 2018.
Okay, so that does include the pay plan accordingly. So, Mr. Chairman, I guess I would add for most of these I will not be voting for to be consistent with my vote as to how I felt about the pay plan and those raises that we voted on in July.
Okay.
I guess I would ask if we could separate item X, and the only reason I say that is that was not part of the pay plan, in my recollection.
I didn't include that with my motion.
Okay.
If I
Oh,
said
okay.
X, I apologize.
I'm sorry.
I
Okay,
meant to stop at W.
Okay, my mistake then. Okay, that's fine.
So, Dr.
motion would
Faust,
be,
you're
item
amending
O
to
through
remove,
W.
okay,
If I said X, I
Agree.
apologize.
all right. Roll call, Mr. Smith.
On items O through W, Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
No.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 138 in title only.
All right, this is a second reading then of ordinance 138, 2017, first 2018 general fund budget, supplemental appropriation of $43,171 for creation of secretarial position in the office of MDJ Bizarro.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Leone and seconded by Dr. Faust. Any discussion? Roll call?
On ordinance 138, Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Possible adoption of resolution number 57 in title only.
Resolution number 57 of 2017, approving the Erie County, Pennsylvania ADA Transition Plan 2018 through 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Faust and seconded by Mr. Leone. Any discussion? Roll call.
On Resolution 57, Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Possible adoption of resolution number 58 in title only.
Resolution number 58, 2017, Allegheny County Hospital Development Authority, not to exceed $1 billion, Health Facilities Revenue Bonds, Allegheny Health Network.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Faust and seconded by Councilwoman Law. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Faust.
Just quickly, for those that are in the audience or watching at home, in case you're curious, this is an Allegheny County Hospital Development Authority, but any participating county or they have a facility that is affected by this particular bond, each of those counties has to pass this particular resolution. So that's why we are here in Erie County.
Thank you, Dr. Faust. Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
I
Leone.
hope Dr. Faust included the fact that this is no cost to the county of Erie. This is a way of getting a reduced rate on their bond.
I
Any-
didn't, I was giving you.
Did you? Okay. I didn't know.
Just to speak up, and I just ask, I understand if you can't hear, but I would just ask that you don't, no outbursts from the crowd, please. Just so you know that, as Councilman Leone has expressed, is that items 58 and actually 59 as well, that it doesn't involve any actual county dollars. But because of the nature of the financing for Allegheny Health Network hospitals around the state, they are working with tax-free bond issues, and the counties are requested to pass the resolutions in their respective counties throughout the state to help them achieve that financing option. Again, it's no dollars from the county. So, any other discussions from council? Roll call.
On Resolution 58, Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. Possible adoption of resolution number 59 in title only.
Erie County Council Resolution Number 59, 2017, Erie County Community Services Financing Authority not to exceed $6,200,000 tax-exempt note, Greater Regional Erie Athletic Team Training Project.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Dr. Faust and seconded by Councilman Leone. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Faust.
just, I would encourage my colleagues to vote for this measure. I think it's a worthy project. I know Mr. Cataldi's here tonight, and as he expressed last week, it's been a long time coming to get to this particular point. I think it's something that can benefit the community. If you did not see it on the news, the JMC Ice Arena is out for the year, so it just further makes the need for these types of facilities that much greater in our community. If you have young children or grandchildren and you ever want to take them ice skating in this community, it is not the most fun thing in the world because there's very little space on the ice because people are grabbing whatever ice time they can get. So hopefully this, in a lot of ways, will benefit our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Faust. Any other discussion? Roll call, Mr. Smith.
On Resolution 59, Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman,
No. Possible adoption of resolution number 60 in title only.
Resolution Number 60, 2017, approval of the 2018 operating capital budget of the Erie County Convention Center Authority and associated properties.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Law and seconded by Councilman Leone. Any discussion? Roll call.
On Resolution 60, Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman,
Yes. Possible adoption of resolution number 61 in title only.
Resolution Number 61 of 2017, approving a two-year lease agreement between the Renaissance Center Limited and the County of Erie.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Faust and seconded by Councilman Horton. Any discussion? Roll call.
On Resolution 61, Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman,
Yes. For those that are following on your agenda, we had removed item DD, and so we're going to move on to EE, which is possible adoption of resolution number 63 in title only.
Resolution Number 63, 2017, approving the intergovernmental transfer agreement between the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services, the Office of Long-Term Living, and the County of Erie.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Horton and seconded by Dr. Faust or Councilman Leone? We'll go with that. Okay, roll call, please. Or first, any discussion? Of course not. Roll call, please.
On Resolution 63, Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman,
Yes. Since we tabled the next resolution, we're going to move on to item GG, which is possible adoption of resolution number 65 in title only.
Resolution Number 65, 2017, resolution to prohibit the placement of video gaming terminals, VGT, in Erie County.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Faust and seconded by Councilman Horton. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Dr. Faust.
Just very quickly, that if we wish to have VGTs in Erie County, we would want to vote no on this particular resolution.
Oh, yes.
I say that for my own
Thank you,
clarification.
thank you, Dr. Faust. I do want to bring up the point, I appreciate having representatives from TA and Flying J. I come from a family of truckers, actually. My parents, my brother's actually still a long-haul truck driver as well. I appreciate you gentlemen coming out and talk. Just so you know, the way the state legislation was worked, we only have one shot at prohibiting the VGTs, but that doesn't mean that we can't unprohibit it. It's just basically this is like the one shot to do so. Otherwise, after the first of the year, we will not have the opportunity to ban them, so to speak. So just if it does pass tonight, that doesn't mean that VGTs are forever banned. There's still an option to approach county government and to have that ban lifted. So again, if you're really set on not having the ban, I'd recommend you to do come back to county government in the future. So with that being said,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. DiMatteo.
And just so I'm clear on this too, and maybe to explain, I think it was Mr. Shepner who said that, Erie County stands to gain, 10% of this revenue. Unless I misunderstood how it is written at the state level, all the revenue from the VGTs and the proceeds thereof, that 10%, will go to a pool in Harrisburg to be distributed at their discretion. We are not guaranteed to get any VGT money here in Erie County, at least the way the legislation is written at this time. Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Mr. Smith.
On Resolution 65, Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
No?
Chairman Brenneman,
Yes. Possible adoption of resolution number 66 in title only.
approving Resolution 66 of 2017, approving solicitor contracts submitted by the Office of the Controller.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Leone, second by Councilman Horton. Any discussion? Roll call?
On Resolution 66, Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Faust.
I know a couple of the appointments will be separated, but just to get the motion, and each individual council person can create the separate vote as they wish, but just to move to approve the appointments contained within items I through double Y, I'm sorry, that's double I through double Y with one vote.
Moved by Dr. Faust.
And each council.
And again, we can still do separations. Any second?
Yes, I want to separate them. I will not second the motion.
Mr. Chairman, can I amend my motion then to move the appointments contained within items JJ and then from double L through double Y in one motion?
Moved by Dr. Faust.
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Horton. Any discussion? I will say that we ended up doing the same thing that we would have done anyways with Dr. Faust. But roll call on the motion.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman,
Yes. Possible reappointment of Dave Abel to 5-year term on Erie County Gaming Revenue Authority. Title only.
Has to be moved.
Or as we motion. Would you like to make that motion?
No.
No?
Oh, yes, I would. As a matter of fact, I'm sorry. Move to reappoint Dave Yep to a 5-year term on Erie County Gaming Revenue Authority to represent Mr. Brenneman's district.
Moved by Dr. Faust. Do we have a second? Can I second things? Oh,
Yes, you can.
I can't? Well, I'll second that then. I've never seconded anything as a council member. Yeah, just for the sake of discussion and see where the votes lie, I will second that motion. Any
Chairman.
discussion? Dr. Faust?
The reason I'm going to vote for this particular appointment, and also Mr. McCormick, is that 4 years ago, as we had colleagues who were outgoing of council, we provided them the courtesy of reappointing people to the boards that they had the particular authority to do so. The only thing that has changed between now and then is our particular colleague. That's not a course of action I think is particularly fair, and that's why I'm going to approve. I think both Mr. Yapel and Mr. McCormick are excellent representatives of the two boards that they sit on as well. So I will vote in the affirmative. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Demay.
I would just like to say, and I mean no disrespect to Mr. Brenneman or to Mr. Yapel, and I consider both of them friends. I too will be leaving council at the end of this year. I have two appointments that will expire at the end of this year. At least my thought is, and at least from a procedural standpoint, that when those people, when the two people, their terms are up at the end of this year, I could, I suppose, reappoint the same way that Mr. Brenneman, but I feel that Mr. Rastatter, who will be taking my seat, should be afforded that possibility moving into next year. So at least for Mr. Yapel, I will not be voting in the affirmative. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Horton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. 4 years ago, I came and I took a seat. I was elected, and we asked the outgoing representative of the 2nd Legislative District, which I now represent, to allow us to make our own appointment, and that didn't happen. And I didn't think that that was fair then, and for an outgoing colleague to appoint someone who would be here for another 4 or 5 years when we had a new colleague coming on board. And I realize that practice has been undertaken in the past, but for those reasons, I won't be supporting these nominations.
Any other discussion? I'll just make a point that I have never made an appointment to this board. The way it falls, it would come up under the expiration of this year, and according to our solicitor who emailed everybody that it does allow for the appointment to be made before the expiration. On top of that, I would express that, on top of that, I would like to express the fact that beside what Dr. Faust has pointed to, that it's while for Mr. Horton and Mr. DiMatteo, it would be not outside of how they acted before, at least for Mr. DiMatteo, that it is outside the norm of other council members beforehand. I would make the point that I've sat on as the liaison to ECRA for the past 4 years. And that Mr. Yapel has had a perfect attendance record to every single meeting, has been involved and engaged, and has done fantastic work, I think, that we could ask for. Again, this isn't a normal appointment where, there's some appointments that run concurrent with the terms. There are appointments that occur. I'll take, for instance, the appointment that Councilman Leon, myself, and Councilman Horton and I made in April before the primary election, where the three of us decided on appointment for a board. Again, that was an appointment that went beyond my term, and without certainty, although he was obviously reelected, Councilman Horton's term. So I would just like to make that point, and the fact that we do quite regularly make appointments and decisions that live beyond our terms. But again, I'm not making, this isn't like this is the second appointment I've had to this position. It's my first, and I think that it's well served. Again, somebody who's committed a lot of time, and it isn't like I'm trying to sneak in an appointment that, again, the next council member will have ample opportunity to as well appoint. So, Dr. Faust.
Just, I'll remind everybody that those appointments, by the way, went through 4 years ago unanimously. Just about all of them. There was 2 that were pulled that were separate. And, we have set a precedent, and I just hope that we can continue with it. Thank you. It's a courtesy that if it was extended once before and is extended this time, all of us will either be defeated at the ballot box or be term limited. So we will be on our way out someday. And we may wish to have that same courtesy extended to us as well. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Mr. Smith.
On the appointment, Mr. DiMatteo,
No.
Mrs. Fatica,
No.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
No.
Mrs. Law,
No.
Mr. Horton,
No.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, move to reappoint Michael McCormick to a 4-year term on the Erie County Convention Center Authority to represent Mrs. Lowell's district.
Moved by Dr. Faust.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Law. Any discussion? Roll call.
On the appointment, Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
No.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
No.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. That takes
Mr.
us,
Chairman, move
Dr.
to approve
Faust.
the sale of parcels from repository for unsold properties according to the index numbers listed in our agenda tonight.
Second?
Moved by Dr. Faust and seconded by Councilman Leone. Any discussion? Roll call?
On the sale of parcels, Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Chairman Brenneman.
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 139 in title only.
A first reading of ordinance number 139, 2017, an ordinance of the County of Erie, Pennsylvania, authorizing the Recorder of Deeds to collect additional recording fees for the express purpose of demolition of blighted property within the county.
First reading of ordinance number 140 in title only.
Resolution number 40, 117, amendment to the Administrative Code, Article 6, Section 12D, Financial Procedures.
Mr. Chairman, move to adjourn.
We stand adjourned.